Welcome back to the desk of Professor Sky. Well, I uploaded my first video yesterday, and so far, 0 views. Now, I have a fair amount of confidence in this project because I started a project like this, 3 years ago, and I got some views. So this is kind of funny because right now, I'm talking to nobody. But it's okay, I'm not advertising. So if you found this, congratulations, you're one of the very first people. So part of, what I'm doing here on this channel is just anything that I think about, like any video game or movie or book or whatever. Just if I have a thought about it, I'm gonna share it here. It's probably gonna be pretty short, gonna be kind of silly, but just kind of share some ideas. And they're usually contrarian ideas because I don't feel the need to say what everyone else is already thinking. So let's talk about the movie The Many Saints of Newark, the HBO produced prequel to the Sopranos TV show. Now, the general consensus is that it's a bad movie. And I don't disagree with anybody who says that. Like, I understand the point. And I think the main issue is that it's basically 4 good movies jammed into one bad movie, okay? It's trying to do too much. And I'm going to acknowledge that and talk about that for a second. But I think with more time, I think what we're going to find is that the things that it does well, one second, let me do a little poly hand motion. The things it does well, it does so well that it really adds a lot to the Sopranos TV show. So even though it seems like it might be taking away from its legacy by being kind of a bloated, unfocused mess, there's little subtleties that I want to get to. But first of all, like what are these 4 good movies in one bad movie? I'd say the least interesting storyline, and spoilers for the entire Sopranos TV show, if you haven't watched it, I'm rewatching it now with my wife. She's a big fan. And at the end of the video, I need to remember, I will give you my dad's review of The Sopranos, which is the funniest review you have ever heard. I promise you, it'll be the funniest thing you've heard all day. If it's not, you can never subscribe to this channel. You can unsubscribe from my other channel. It's the funniest review you've ever heard of The Sopranos, and it's coming at the end of this video. But anyways, so full spoilers, it has the posthumous narration from Christopher, right? From Christopher Moltisanti. And right off the bat, I'm sort of like, I don't care. I mean, the relationship between Tony and Christopher was great. It's one of the great parts about the show. But this isn't drawing me in. Like, I'm immediately like, yeah, really? We're going to be rehashing this? So the story, like, how did Christopher come to existence? Not that interesting. That's one story. Another story is the race conflict between the mafia and the black street gangs of Newark in the 60s. Now that's an interesting idea. I think David Chase should throw his weight around and make an entire show about this. You can set that in the Sopranos timeline, have it be like a mixture between like the catastrophically bad 4th season of Fargo and the Sopranos, right? Like, it could be an interesting idea, but it doesn't quite fit within The Sopranos, and it feels a little too 2020, a little bit too much like, oh crap, we have to address race and everything, and I think Sopranos does a great job in addressing race and especially class, and I don't think that we need this edition. The third story is very interesting, and that's of Dickie Moltisanti, Christopher's father. I like his story, his relationship with his father, his relationship with his uncle. Everything about this whole story is just great. And I feel like if they just released a movie that was just that part, with like Tony and everyone else just being side figures, it would have been just a great standalone mob picture, right? Like, what The Sopranos did so well was show all these people at the edges of the mafia just sort of desperately hanging on, desperately trying to have relevance, desperately trying to make enough of a living while living such a horribly dangerous life, right? That would have been great. Just take the Sopranos brand and use it to tell some story that you feel like telling, Like in a way, that's sort of what some of the more interesting directors with Disney do, like with Marvel or Star Wars or whatever. They just take all this capital, all this IP strength, and then do it to make something very interesting. I think the Dickie Moltisanti story is great, but it's watered down and mixed up with the Christopher story, and then the black and Italian story, and then finally the most interesting story, the story that most people came for, the story of how did Tony Soprano become Tony Soprano, right? Now, obviously, there's a lot of interesting casting in the movie. I think the casting is simultaneously the worst and the best part of the movie. The fact that they cast people who match Silvio and Polly and Big Pussy, that it matched them perfectly, completely takes away from the movie. It totally hurts the movie. Because what I don't want, or what I didn't want, is lip service to superficial fans. Okay, now I'm not a super fan. Okay, I've seen the show like 1.5 times. I'm not like, I have a friend, Nick Braccia. He wrote a great book called Off the Back of a Truck. I'll include a link in it in my description. You should read it. It's all about Soprano. It's all about Sopranos lore and stuff like that. And I read that book and I'm a little bit lost, right? So I'm not like a super fan, but I'm enough of a fan to feel insulted when they have some guy aping Silvio who looks just like Silvio and just talks just like him, and we're supposed to think that he's like 30 in 1967, and then we're supposed to think he's 40 in 1999. It's like this weird thing that they're doing, and it's just too cute, and it's just member berries, and it's just like, it's impressive, but it's a failure. And going back to the Star Wars thing, the actor who they cast to play a young Han Solo, Aiden Ehrenreich, that's how you say his name, he was widely disliked, but I think he was actually really quite good because he was able to embody the spirit of young Han Solo, right? There was another actor, a guy who looked just like him, just like young Harrison Ford, and they didn't cast him, and all the fanboys on the internet were like, come on, why didn't they cast him? Well, they shouldn't have, because you don't actually want to get that feeling. You don't want people to go, oh, that's perfect. You want them to say, oh, wow, that's really good. So that was the worst part of the movie. The best part of the movie was the biggest stunt casting of all, casting James Gandolfini's son as Tony. They just lucked out. The kid not only knows how to act, okay? And I don't know. I don't know what his experience is growing up. It must be terrible having a father die when you're young. But it's not the way he talks. It's his silence. It's that brooding, look, James Gandolfini, nobody does a bet, as far as I can tell, in Hollywood, ever. The look of being confused while understanding the situation completely. That's what Tony Soprano does. He looks at you like he doesn't know what's going on, but then at the same time, he knows exactly what to do about it. And his son is able to project that so beautifully. And that leads into this other part of the movie, this fourth part of the movie, which I think is a great part. This is the part that I think, the Dickie Moltisanti is just a separate side story, sort of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, just kind of put that over there, right? The other two stories are okay, but I don't think they're that well done. But it's really the stuff with young Tony, and in particular, the relationship between him and his mother, which defines so much of the show. And there's one scene in particular, which I believe, if we're to take all of The Sopranos and say, what do we need to take from this movie, The Many Saints of Newark? What one scene needs to be in the long story of The Sopranos? And it's Livia Soprano, Tony's mom, talking to the guidance counselor at the high school. Now here's an actress who doesn't look just like the actress who played Livia Soprano, but she has the feeling. She feels like it, this hand motion that she does, this dismissal, this brief moment where she sort of understands the nurturing that Tony needed to not become what he would become. There's this brief moment of absolute clarity of Tony Soprano's mother. Just 5 seconds. And it's the tragedy of Tony Soprano right there. Right there. This is the point in the prequel where you go, oh, he just killed all the Sand people. He became Darth Vader. This is the point. This is it right here. And it's not even anything that he's doing. It's something that she's doing. It's this lack of love, this lack of nurturing, this lack of care, this complete and utter dysfunction on the part of Livia Soprano. So I'm making an argument. Go see it. Support it. It's got enough good in it that the stuff that's bad, the fact that it's badly put together, okay, doesn't mean that we should reject it. We should be happy for it, if for nothing else than for that one singular scene. Okay, I don't know who's ever going to watch this. If you do watch this, you put it on there. I just mentioned in my last video on my main channel that I have a secret channel, so we'll see how long it takes people to get it. Later in the month, I'm going to go public with it. But until next time, there's the camera.